weeks. The large hydrovac truck from Gateway out doing some potholing across those 3 miles of Chestnut to verify location of existing infrastructure so we can thread the needle. And once that's finalized, we're going to quickly move into starting that, reaching out to landowners and meeting with them to negotiate the terms for a necessary temporary construction easement. Next, also a new slide, as I discussed, the design is now at that stage and point where we are ready to start going out and acquiring the necessary permitting across the program. You do notice there's a couple of items here on the water drops where it has been submitted. On the first one, the DEQ, this is for permits to construct for the infrastructure components. The second one on ODOT, that represents 8 total crossings for the pipeline. In ODOT jurisdiction, for example, I-35. The railroads, there are 3 railroad crossings across the pipeline, 2 of which are in and around the city of Enid city limits, and then one of them that's all the way over by Ponca City, south of their refinery on the south end of town. For counties, that represents the county road crossings. As you're aware, there's 4 counties with jurisdiction across the transmission pipeline. That does represent a total of 53 county road crossings. Then last, on the Section 404 permitting for the wetlands, this is one of the last ones to be completed, and that'll get submitted in the spring. And then moving on to our schedule. So you guys have seen this. We've discussed this plenty over the past year here. I do want to reorient you to the color legend here. So green is Garver, blue is Garney, and red is the city of Enid. So as already discussed, we are on track with environmental. We are on track with design. We are about to start on the permitting piece. And then with Garney's GMP discussions this evening, the city will be ready for OWRB, which you can see the red diamonds there. And then unless you have any questions, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Graves to discuss Garver's construction phase 4 services.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Good evening, Mayor and Commission. Just put this in my pocket. It's good to be on schedule, isn't it?
It is.
Just a quick overview. We discussed this a little bit more detail the last time I was here about a month and a half ago about what's forthcoming with regards to Garver's services. Now this is completely separate from Garney. This is just the engineer's support during the construction phase. You may recall this graphic that describes at a high level what those services are. Continuing on with program management. Now I did leave the construction management on this slide just to call your attention to the fact that Garney will continue on as the construction manager, obviously. Continued engineering support in the form of submittal reviews or clarifications that might be necessary by field personnel to help clarify the design. Construction observation to oversee the material installation, compaction, try to see stuff as much as possible before it gets buried to make sure that it's properly installed according to our specifications. Material testing will be provided by others, third parties. Systems integration, I talked about that last time. You may recall that's the controls integration where we can, using the computer software, we can monitor and control the system from the intake through the pipeline all the way to the water treatment plant and distribution into the community. That's a very important component of the project. Otherwise, it's kind of just running by itself without those controls. And so we do that system integration. And then finally, maybe the most important part where the rubber meets the road, I like to say, and that's the operations and startup assistance. That's when we hand the keys to the operations staff with us in the front seat of the car with them, helping them get this thing up and running and making quality water at the tap. So that's a broad overview of the services. Our construction phase services provide quality assurance for the program. It's intended to be a 30-month construction phase. 3 months of that include the detailed operations support. And there's some pretty detailed language there referencing our support of your staff as we not only start up, but operate that facility during that first 3-month period. In all, well over 100,000 hours of anticipated effort, plus all of the expenses associated with that effort, travel, lodging, some equipment expenses as well. All of that is anticipated to be submitted under a not to exceed fee of $21 million, which is within the baseline of the budget for phase 4 services that we've been identifying for many years now. And so with that, again, brief overview, we'll be bringing that to you at a future meeting. I just want to, in an effort to keep the commission from being surprised, I want to try to talk about that every chance we get.
Evening.
Evening.
Quick update on Garney's progress, our progress towards the guaranteed maximum price for the project. Short overview on some of the activities completed to date or since the last time we came here and spoke with you. We have continued our value engineering efforts with Garber and the city, continued those constructability reviews, continued to advance the design. Continued our estimating services, expanded those forward into the GMP proposal that we'll talk about here this evening. Increased vendor engagement. This means subcontractors and suppliers and coordination with those subcontractors and suppliers during the early phases of a pre-procurement package. Coordination with Oklahoma DEQ and Army Corps of Engineers with regards to the project and particularly some of the work proposed at the intake facility within the lake. We also received solicitation set number 1, which was our first early procurement package for a handful of specific components for the project. And last but not least, these efforts culminate in our initial compilation of our GMP estimate and what we would plan to propose for the ultimate GMP amount. On this slide, this is a rough breakdown, a pretty general breakdown of the project as a whole in terms of the construction phase of the project, broken down at the highest level by facility, contract, general conditions, bonds, insurance, CMAR contingency fee, and a total proposed GMP amount of $243,358,908. Again, this is a result of our estimating services to date, value engineering to date, and reflective of receipt in the initial procurement package. Questions on this slide before I move forward? Okay.
That's good news. That number's good news, just so we're clear. That brings when we're talking about round numbers, that brings it up to 317, basically?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Now the question is, if you have any questions about that particular part of it, we can address it now. But here's what we see as the path forward. Whoops. This is our budget summary on where we're at. That rounds us up to that 317.5 number. It shows you how we are with regard to each of those major components that have been in the budget. And if you'll go back and compare that to your budget summary that we provided in June when we rebaselined the budget, you'll be able to see exactly where we are over and under on those.
Pretty close.
Pretty close.
Yes,
sir.
Close.
Mayor, did you have a question?
He just said surprisingly close.
I said surprisingly close.
Surprisingly close. Yes. So what we've done is we've provided you with what the GMP is going to look like in the dollar amount. where it's allocated and how it compares to the baseline budget. What we're going to recommend as the path forward is we come back in December, we'll have Garni prepare a GMP proposal, which will be a book. So it's not just one sheet of paper, it's a book. And present that to you on the first meeting in December for acceptance. Upon that acceptance and in that meeting, we're kind of anticipating that we're going to recommend that you award the professional services contract to Garver. That sets us up for a potential board meeting on the 15th. We threw in the 17th as contract award, assuming 2 days to close. We don't know. I don't know what that date or time frame really is. I just know at the earliest we can be set up to do that and do a construction award a construction contract. Those two activities will award the services and the construction contract. Additionally, in January, Garni will continue their early procurement. In February, we'll finalize our permitting at the Corps of Engineers and most of the other areas with ODOT and the counties. The counties being the ones that are probably going to take us the most time because they're spread out and there's many of them. And then in February, we'll ask you to incorporate the final design into the contract with the construction manager, and then we'll begin construction in March. Questions?
Okay, at what point do we go to OWRB?
On the 15th of December.
Okay. Does the information we have, is that going to coincide with meetings that they have scheduled? Okay, all right.
Does that work?
Yes, it will, and Alan Brooks can speak to it more if you'd like him to.
Okay.
When will we have a draft of that thick book, or at least the contract part of it? I'm interested in how some of that language is going to get structured.
Yes. I believe you have the draft A201, which is the contract itself, the agreement for construction management services. David, how much time do you need to put together the proposal? Monday after Thanksgiving, he says.
Okay. I know it's
Really?
big, but it's like,
That's soon? That's not very far away.
no pressure. I mean, that's, it's like the biggest thing we've ever signed. I want to do
Yes.
my homework and have some time to
Absolutely.
try to understand what the hell it all means before we approve it.
And we have no problem if you want another copy electronically of the 133, which is the contract with Garni, and the 201, which are the general conditions for construction management. We can make that available to you again. Easy enough. And as soon as we get the GMP proposal, we'll get that out to you as well, as soon as Gerald approves it.
Yeah, we'll make it as easy for you as we can. If we've already got the 201 and the 133, we'll send it to you now, and then we'll get, I guess, the Monday after Thanksgiving, we'll get you the other document.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I believe that
Thank you.
completes our presentation.
Well, I did not, we would be done already. Wow, that's fantastic.
Well, the number was a whole lot better than I anticipated. I mean, it makes it an easier discussion when you don't bring us a $350 million project. It's 317 is, I mean, really, guys, nice work. I'm thrilled. I was terrified of that number growing, and you did. I mean, that guaranteed maximum price, we've been gambling on this for 3 years or something, that we would end up with some, hedging our bets, and I cannot tell you how thrilled I am to come to us with that kind of number for the whole shooting match that's digestible and within our budget, and really nice work all around.
Thank you, sir. And it's mostly the team players from Garni and Garver, and really being motivated to bring this in. It's something that we could all live with. So really, it's their work that did it.
Can you tell us what concessions were made to help it come within budget?
Yes, I
For
can.
instance, 36-inch down to 30-inch and stuff like that.
Yes, when we got out of Osage County, we reduced down to 30-inch. We ended up going with bar wrap concrete pipe because it was the lowest bid. It's not our favorite, but we decided that for the sake of the budget, that's what we'll do. We can live with it. We've lived with concrete pipe before, so we can live with it now. It'll make it a little harder on David Hunter, but he'll get used to it. At the intake, we had to go to low voltage as opposed to medium voltage, which, by the way, is one of my #1 things to put back in there if I get any budget relief and things start coming in lower. The intent is that makes that upgrade when we have to expand it something that's already taken care of. Because if I can get the medium voltage in and the pumps, we have that capability. We've moved the admin building to on top of the filter bay. And so we got rid of a complete building. We're in the process of doing a little redesign on the ozone building, not to take it away, but to reduce the amount of concrete wall and concrete floor that we're building. And that will make a fairly sizable change. That's where we really got some of the good out of this last two or 3 weeks. They've always been on our radar, but they were steps that I really wasn't thinking we should take until we had to.
Talk to us a little bit about as it's designed now, what's just like the taste of the water quality. I mean, that's part of what we've been talking about going back and forth with a little bit as this design has evolved. You know, when we were talking about, let's throw $1 bazillion at it, we would have reverse osmosis and every conceivable, Coca-Cola running through lines. I mean, what does it taste like now?
Well, I don't know, but I will tell you, I told you at the beginning of this, I'm not going to sacrifice GAC and I'm not going to sacrifice ozone as pre-treatment and post-treatment. And we didn't have to. Michael?
Good question, Ben. Before I answer that, I want to thank you for your comments about the team. And I would echo Chris's response, and I would include the city staff. And I would include all of you guys and previous councils as well. This has been a challenging program and project, probably the largest in this city's history for some time to come, maybe forever. And we really, at Garver, and maybe I'll speak for Garney, he may want to correct me, but we really appreciate your patience and your confidence in our team to get us where we're at today. So thank you for your kind comments, and you guys are just as much a team member as everybody Chris mentioned earlier. Surface water certainly tastes different than groundwater. That's what we have to be comfortable with. That's what we already are comfortable with, right? Because that's what we're doing. We can put a lot of different tools, bells, whistles in place to do our best. We can throw the kitchen sink at it literally with RO and those kind of things to try to match the taste of your existing groundwater as much as possible. We don't have the budget for that. What we have the budget for is first and foremost to meet the Safe Drinking Water Act requirements as enforced by the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality and EPA. But what Chris mentioned that is very important. What remained in the project was GAC, granular activated carbon, and ozone. Those are two of those kitchen sink type items, far from the kitchen sink entirely, but those are two bells and whistles, if you will, that give us a really good chance of addressing seasonal taste and odor complaints. It's not a routine thing. It doesn't happen the entire time, but it does happen seasonally, and the occurrence of it is routine, fall and spring. And we're going to have to be very transparent in how we communicate that to our citizens. And we're doing the best thing we have the best toolbox that you can afford to address it through ozone and granular activated carbon.
And that's all been built into the operations budget part of it, with the assumption that it would be not 12 months out of the year, but 4 or 5 or?
Correct. Now, the city prepared the O&M budget for the program, and it did include the use of ozone and GAC, probably at a little higher levels than what we might actually end up using.
Okay.
But it just depends. It depends on how bad the spring rains are, and that oxygen depletion in the lake. There are other tools besides chemical treatment and ozone treatment. We specifically targeted a multi-level intake so that we could try to find the best water quality when these outbreaks were occurring. That's still an option. One other key component that's not in the treatment plan in the form of a material or equipment or process, and it's not at the intake in the form of equipment, but it's the quality of the operation staff. And I think you guys I know you have a great staff in place now that are taking care of the distribution and collection system. You've got a good contractor at your wastewater plant. As things start to progress, we start to break ground, we really need to be focusing on the long-term operation strategy of this facility. Because we can have all the bells and whistles in the world. We can have that RO plant. But if we're not properly analyzing the raw water characteristics, and we're not building trends and tracking trends in the spring and in the fall over a long period of time, and we're not proactively making the right operational decisions at the treatment plant or at the intake, then those bells and whistles aren't going to do us any good. And so we're going to be here to help train whoever that is. Of course, we're not going anywhere. Garber's anchored Oklahoma firm, so we're always going to be there for you. But that's a critical component beyond just the bells and whistles in the treatment plant.
And Chris, when we built the wastewater treatment plant, the intent was to have city staff operating it. We discovered a few years on that wasn't really working. We contract with, I can't remember the name of the firm, but to operate our wastewater treatment plant. This treatment plant is the intent that we will, within our city staff, be able to manage the day-to-day operations, or are we expecting to have to contract some of those services out like we do with the wastewater?
I'm expecting David Hunter to be able to operate this plant. That's one of the reasons why we've got that operational support for 3 months after the plant gets stood up and gets turned operational. And so David and his crews have somebody sitting with them and walking them through operations for 3 months.
Right, but then the question was long-term city staff, or do we have to contract?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And do we have some assurances that, because again, that wasn't the case with our wastewater treatment plant long-term. What are we doing to make sure we have the properly trained staff? And this is a pretty sophisticated plant we're doing here.
Well, let me jump in before David does. David's a great addition as the leader, the director of public utilities. We know that we're going to have to bring additional staff on and train them properly. And I know that we're working on that plan. And part of that plan includes, or at one time included, going over to Stillwater and cross-training some folks. In fact, we would have been doing that already, but for COVID issues. The comparison to the wastewater plant, there were some other issues there that caused us to go the route we did at the time. I don't think that's a permanent solution. I think someday we'll be managing that ourselves as well.
Okay.
But definitely the water treatment plant is something that David will be managing with his people, and I'm sure he's already been thinking about it. He's been, 2 months on the job now, or am I giving you too much credit already?
Probably feels
3.
like
All right, well, good. We're glad to have you.
And the basic plant behind the ozone and the GAC is a very traditional, easy to operate plant. David, you own it.
Yeah, I think obviously groundwater and surface water are going to be significantly different as far as a treatment standpoint. And there is going to be a learning curve, and it is going to take dedicated staff and training to get there. But it is going to be something we're going to have to build up the staff. We're going to have to add additional staff to make sure that they can run that plant. But that is something that we are planning for as part of this process. Where I was before, we had surface water plants, and I do have some experience in that. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that it's just going to be an easy transition. It is going to take work, and it's going to take dedication.
You looked at it funny. Great. Mm-hmm.
So essentially, one of the things that we're doing right now is working with the data that they're providing, looking at the data from our plant, and essentially kind of making a model and saying what is going to happen when we mix these two types of water together. And then essentially, it's at some level, I equate the wastewater treatment plant to farmers because we're managing bugs. On the drinking water plant, especially with surface water side, I kind of equate it to cooks because we're going to have to understand that balance and that recipe to find the right mixture. It will potentially be different, and we're going to have to understand that. But our job is to make sure that we can get it as close to that original flavor as possible.
Great. I think I just have one more question, Michael. And this is probably in a slide somewhere, but I'm sure you'll have it at hand. At this point, as it's designed today, as it's designed to be built, how many million gallons a day is our throughput from COG going to be?
Shane will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to go 10.2 MGD.
10.2?
10.5.
And then the maximum, assuming we added on an intermediate booster pump station and whatever else we could add on at some point down the road, what's the maximum we could draw?
I remember trying to target a full build out of 21 MGD.
And that's still, we haven't cut out anything that would limit that down the road, assuming we had the demand and the money to do it.
Correct.
Okay.
The things that we put in the ground and in the water, we don't have to change, with the exception of the header pipe in the lake.
Okay.
Everything else is adding modular pieces, additional booster pump station, at some point, additional filter train, additional GAC, additional ozone, but it's laid out that it's just modular kind of things. It's not cheap.
Right, but we're not hamstringing ourselves.
We are not hamstringing ourselves.
And so as built, the 315 buys us 10.2 million gallons a day.
10.5.
10.5 million gallons a day. That extra bit counts. Do we have a sense, do we have any current studies on what the sustainable yield from the well fields is at this point? Not assuming a reduction of the water level, but just sustainable yield.
We only have those that we got from Guernsey and what we calculated based when we did just a real tabletop, and we're figuring 6 MGD. At some point, the water board will issue their report, but we don't know what that is.
But we haven't done anything more updated than what Guernsey did 9 years ago.
Have not.
Okay.
We took that 6, peaking at 12, and designed the capacity of the water system from CAW and to get that kind of water over here so we could have that 2-to-1 blend.
Is it still correct that our well field that our well levels are continuing to drop year by year? Our water level in the wells?
The last time I looked at them, I wouldn't say that they're dropping at this point. They are more fluctuating. And what I've seen when I look at historical data is something where they go down and then they go back up. I think long-term, that curve is a slight slope downwards.
Okay. That was part of the driving, impetus behind this 8 years ago, was that well field was going to continue to be a depleting resource. And some of that may be driven by, there's not oil and gas drawing from it for fracking at this point, and maybe farmers not drawing from it quite as much for the center pivots, but that was long-term.
There are a lot of acres out there that are under irrigation right now. And so that demand on that aquifer is still there.
And what's our peak demand today in the middle of the summer? What are we burning through?
He wasn't here last summer. He wasn't here last summer. I can guess. Raleigh can probably
somewhere on the order of 18.
No, last time I heard it, I think it was 18. I just talked to water production. I talked to our water production manager about that just a few days ago when we were discussing some other contractual stuff, and he did say a number of about just right around 18.
But that's, for my assumption is that's for at most a month or two out of the year, that generally we're much lower. Is that more or less correct, Chris?
Raleigh says that last summer we peaked at 15.
15. Great. Good news. All very good news. Thank you.
I just add one more thing to the 21. And I want to speak to the value of the decision that the commission made to go to CMAR. As we have battled through designing to cost, designing to budget, we have run into roadblocks, either because of our engineers or because of folks with Garney that have pointed out, well, hey, if we do this, the city is going to spend a lot more money on that next module. Let's try to save this if we can. And to my knowledge, David may correct me, but I think we've been able to, if you think about Legos or puzzles, I think we've been able to keep all of those puzzles in place so that module just plugs in. when that additional capacity is needed. Garver's good firm and everything, but we might have made a decision to remove one of those puzzle pieces had a contractor not been in the room with us at the time. So I think there was a lot of value.
Just a quick clarification or addition to the comment. Absolutely, in the modular approach, both at the intake with an opportunity to relatively easily expand the size of the intake screens if ever appropriate at some point in the future, as well as the primary treatment components within the water treatment plant. They've been named, but the GAC system and the ozone system are very much designed and constructed in a modular type format that eases in future expansion, where any future expansion really looks more like an add-on than it does a demolish and rebuild. To my knowledge, I don't see any demolish and rebuild in the future. It's more adding on additional.
Okay, I lied. I got one more question. Sorry, we've got time to kill, Sagan. But the only other question I think I have at the moment, we talked at one point that lifespan of, I think, the pump components was less than the debt service component. What's the lifespan of the, just broad strokes, lifespan of the concrete pipeline is
Forever.
bullshit.
As long
80 years, 100 years?
1952 model concrete pipe that's in the ground.
Yeah,
Fortunately for us, we run it at a low pressure.
sure.
This one won't last quite that well.
But so 70, 80 years, is that what we're talking about lifespan?
We designed it for 50 years.
Okay. And the pumps, do those have a shorter lifespan? Are we going to be looking at in 25 years or 20 years a big replacement?
Everything is designed to last 30 years.
30, okay.
But there are wear items, the bearings within a gearbox or bearings within a pump that require maintenance. And so again, with good operations and maintenance, that equipment will last well beyond 30 years.
Okay. I had some memory at some point that we were going to have to project on the order of 20 or $30 million replacement of something well before the debt service paid off. But is that still the case? Or we're looking at basically good news. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir. I have one question.
Please.
On the, I know we had spoke previously in the past about the material of the pipe being metal, and we were looking at a company down in Dallas possibly purchasing some of the metal. Will we be purchasing the materials for the pipe here in Oklahoma, or are we going to purchase that out of state?
At this point in time, it appears that the pipe manufacturer is most likely to be Thompson Pressure Pipe. They're headquartered out of Grand Prairie, Texas. So that's where the bulk of the procurement will take place, or the manufacturing will take place. Some fabrication might be offsite outside their main facility, but the vast majority of it will be from Grand Prairie, Texas.
Okay, thank you.
And I will add that American Iron and Steel is required on this project.
Chris.
I'm a logistician, not an engineer. So how do we make I'm guessing to get as much water through a 30-inch pipe as we've had through a 36-inch means we're going to just make it flow faster so we come up with the same amount at the other end? I need a cartoon.
It requires a pump station.
Okay.
Yeah, we're putting a pump station about 2/3 of the way.
Okay. All right.
And the other part of that is you can boost the pressure at the intake and run the water at a higher velocity, but the energy cost will eat you up.
Oh.
And so it's more effective, and you don't have to maintain 300 PSI class pipe all the way through the system.
Okay.
So you can add a booster pump station and pick it up there.
Okay. Thank you.
Chris, so I had a question, excuse me, about so we made a deal with one of the Indian nations about getting permission to go under or across their property. And they were going to get the opportunity to draw water off our line. Does that impact when we go from a 36 to a 30-inch? What they can draw?
No,
and
sir.
do they have to pay to tap into that, or how does that work?
Well, first and foremost, The Osage Nation owns the mineral estate in Osage County. And so since we are in their mineral estate, we needed to communicate with them and talk to them about it and make sure that we deal with the Mineral Council and get the permits. That potential is there. And that is one of the main reasons why we stuck with the 36-inch steel pipe coming out of, until we got out of Osage County.
Okay. That answered my question. Thank you.
We planned for that, yes, sir.
Do they pay for attaching to it then?
I think that's the conversation.
Yeah, Commissioner, we could talk about that in executive session. That agreement's not done yet. And so we'll be glad to update you even tonight.
Thank you.
Anybody else? You sure?
Thanks, team.
Yeah, we do have one more thing, Mr. Mayor. I know Alan Brooks, he would like to update you on the loan schedule, OWRB stuff. And you know, he's a lawyer, so he likes to talk. And so he saw some extra time and space for you.
Well, John Wolf is here and he does really like to talk. So we'll turn that over to him. In terms of just anticipating what's coming up.
I don't think your mic's working.
Hello?
Yeah, I guess you just got to get closer.
Closer?
Yeah.
In terms of what's coming up at your, in addition to what Chris covered tonight, we would envision coming to the city and to the authority with approval of the loan at your meeting on December 1 as well. We've been, is it working now? Better?
Yep.
We anticipate coming with a final loan approval at your meeting on December 1st. As you're aware, the contemplated loan amount has been at the $200 million level. That's the amount that the Oklahoma Water Resources Board is effectively earmarked, protected for this project. I think at this point, what we're contemplating is coming perhaps with a loan approval of $205 million. This is a line of credit. To the extent you don't draw those funds down, you won't pay interest on those, won't be required to pay those back. That gives us just a little bit of flexibility. There's no additional transactional costs. There's no difference in the two. So it's probably in your best interest to go for that $205 million. So that's what we contemplate. We would also contemplate getting an interest rate pulled on December 1st during the day. So at your meeting on the 1st, our hope is that we would be not only approving a principal amount, but actually approving a fixed interest rate at that point in time. And then in terms of closing, we're anticipating closing on or about December 15th, which is the date that the Water Board has their meeting scheduled. This was contemplated to be on their agenda for approval in the neighborhood of the 15th to the 17th, assuming all the pieces come together, but that's what's contemplated right now. Any questions on the financing?
The rate in the draft spreadsheet you sent us, is that more or less what you expect?
I guess the 194 was the rate.
195 on the 205 number. It was 194 on the 200, 195 on the 205.
It's going to be based on the rate at the time, but the rate as of yesterday was in that 194, 195 range. So
okay. The
again,
ballpark.
It'll change day to day, but that's in the range we are right now.
Great. Great rate.
Okay, thank you. Well, we got done a little bit early. We can't bring anything else up that's not on the agenda because of Open Meetings Act, nor can we start our next meeting early because that's a published meeting as well. That said, we're going to gather again and get together at 6:30 for our regular meeting. We're adjourned.